Louisville Public Media.
Support for Race Unwrapped comes from the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. Their mission is to enhance the public's knowledge of the history, heritage, and cultural contribution of African Americans in Kentucky and the African diaspora. KCAAH is dedicated to providing a heritage experience through education, enrichment, and entertainment. Located at 1701 West Muhammad Ali Boulevard. Calendar of events and more at kcaah.org.
I'm Michelle Tyrone Johnson with Race Unwrapped. And I just want to take just a minute to talk to you about how the sausage is made, or in this case, how the show is made. Most of our funding comes from you, so we're taking a second to ask you to be part of it. Go to raceunwrapped.org and click the donate button. And when you do, we'll thank you on a future episode by name, and I'll send you this. It's a sticker that you can put on your water bottle, or on your laptop cover, or on your iPad cover, or any place where you want to show that you listen to your favorite podcast. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the next episode. Welcome to Race Unwrapped. I'm Michelle Tyrone Johnson. I'm sure you've heard the saying, dance like no one is watching. I couldn't help but think of that when talking to Ananya Chatterjea. She's a contemporary Indian dancer and a scholar. We talked about how the very act of dancing can be protest in motion. Chatterjea is the founder, artistic director, and choreographer of Ananya Dance Theatre, and she's also a professor of dance at the University of Minnesota. By living, working, and creating in the heart of Minneapolis, she's had a unique worldview of how, when it comes to protest, art has to dance with the moment. Ananya, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be chatting with you, Michelle.
So you've created a justice and community-oriented methodology of choreography. Could you explain what that means?
Yeah. So, this idea of making dance as a thing in itself, separate from the people, did not appeal to me. So I wanted to know, what are the stories of these Black and brown women and femme people from around the world? What are our stories? How do we feel like sharing our stories, our dreams, our hopes, our struggles, and our joys? So that's how it came to be. Like, listening to people, chatting with people became the source material for making work. So the methodology of dance making began by sort of story weaving, by collecting, talking to each other, weaving together our story fragments. And that's how I ended up creating this methodology of dance making, which is both about our dreams and about, so the present condition of injustice, and about the justice dreams we have.
Man, you sound like you're very thoughtful in how you do all of that. So let me just speak for myself when I say that when I think of protest or social justice art, I don't typically think of dance. So I would love it if you could tell me why I am completely short-sighted on that one.
So our bodies, right, at the center of all the experience of injustice is also our bodies experiencing it. The moment we look at each other, we recognize things about the body on which there are layers of stereotypes and there are layers of experience, right? We experience the world differently as Black and brown peoples. We experience the world differently because of our gender, because of our sexual orientation, because of ability, all these issues. The body is at the center of all these ways. All these sort of vectors of identity that we have, and the way in which experience shapes us, that is, the body is the site. They all impinge on the body. So I feel like I understand what it means to sort of cower down in fear. I understand what it means to heart open. What better medium than dance to actually articulate our experiences? And there's a very famous quote by a feminist, I think Emma Goldstein, who says, if dance is not part of the revolution, I want nothing of it, right?
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking the other day that if you can't see someone's face clearly, you can usually get an idea of what their age is by how they move. Whether you're walking behind somebody or seeing someone on the side. And I guess all movement is a form of dance.
Absolutely. Maybe I can hold up my colleagues in the field who are disability artists in dance, who remind us that the body is the way we move the body is telling our own story.
Man, I know that's true because my body is definitely telling a different story today and how it moves than it did when I was half my age. So I do get that. Could you tell me a little bit about your cultural background and how it plays a part in what you do?
Yeah, so I am from India, but I am from the eastern part of India, Bengal. So my identity, as I identify, is Bengali. That is a particular set of practices around the coast. We are also right next to Bangladesh, which means that we were part of the partition of India that happened at the end of the colonial regime. We share, with the people in Bangladesh who are also Bengali, we share language, poets, songs, what we eat, but we are divided by religion, which is of great pain, you know. Uh, Culturally, so Bengalis are, and each part of the country is different. But Bengal also was one of the two states that had a long history of left front government, which means that I was dancing when I was growing up dancing. I was learning both the traditional dance, which had a more sort of spiritual aspect. I was learning folk dances, and I was learning this dance about for the people, of the people, by the people. That was a really left front, class struggle oriented dance that was also part of Bengal's culture that I learned and I loved, and all the revolutionary songs that came down from the anti-colonial protests into the era of class struggle. That was it entered my blood with great strength, and ultimately pushed me to reject what came to be sort of known as the traditional dance.
I just love that because it sounds like you just know how to dissect and illuminate what influences you and what makes you. And not everybody knows how to do that, especially artists. So, I was going to get to this. You're located in the Minneapolis area. And that means that you have been, part of the heart of two major protest movements, the George Floyd protests in 2020 and then the ICE protest this year. How have you engaged with those protests?
So while the George Floyd protest uprising following the murder of George Floyd was one of the largest, I want to say that actually the history of protest in the Twin Cities goes back long. The murder of Jamar Clark, Philando Castile, there's been a long, Amir Locke, we have a long history of this. And I am absolutely, we always often show up to the protests and, because it's happening right here. How are we not going to go? And I have collaborators with whom we offer our dance sometimes at these sites of both grieving and pushback. And they enter our work. So, in 2021, 2024, or 2023, apologies, 2023, I created a work called Michi Lamra. We are the procession. And this, we led these 4 processions at the George Floyd Memorial Square, at Frogtown Farms, which is a Black-owned urban farm in the Twin Cities, a water walk with Sharon Day, who is an important Native leader in our community. All these walks ultimately became part of our creative process. What does it mean to occupy public space like these protests have done? How have they shifted our imagination? And then I had audience members. I created a work based out of that, and the audience members had to process up to stage and sit on stage while we danced. So there's many ways in which this part, this is part of my creative consciousness completely. So we both participate in the protests, in the marches, and we bring that influence into the work.
I love that. So this year in particular, first of all, this is an odd question I'm about to ask, but would you say that the ICE protests are still happening in Minneapolis? I know the biggest, most attention gathering part of them are over, but are they still happening?
Yes, at the Whipple building, people are still showing up and they are protesting because we know that people are still being deported. The numbers may be down and they moved out to the suburban areas, but it's definitely still happening.
And how do you think that the work you do um, helps support people in a spiritual way?
Ah, I love that you asked me that question. I had decided that I was going to, given the divisiveness of the country at large, I was going to make a piece about public love. Not because who has permission to show their love in public? Only very few people. So I started to make this work about public love, and then we had Operation Metro Surge, and I began to think about how we must remember that it was Black and Brown communities, primarily Black Lives Matter movement, that showed us how to push back and how to push back with showing up, with caring for each other, notions of mutual care network. So this was a very clear way in which we took that model and we have extended it. And the reason why Operation Metro Surge was so successful is because all the signal groups, all the pod work we did during the 2020 uprising just jumped back into life. So just first of all, to maintain that history. And then, I began to understand that public love, this work just became about paying homage to the spirit of love that actually holds this ground. The sort of the native communities, Dakota and Anishinaabe communities who constantly teach us about the sacredness of the water and this land. This Black Lives Matter protests who have taught us how to really notice all aspects of the revolution, not just direct action. It's not just political process. It's also care of community and each other. So all of those become part of a spiritual force. And so I'm making this work, and the biggest section in the center, which is, resistance rage, is sort of framed by a section where we just dance together in great fury and feeling, but care for each other. So it's moved by our ancestors and the future generations that are about to come.
Wow. I mean, you again, you sound so intentional and spiritually intentional at that, which is, no small thing to do. So, as we both know, words matter. And as I've been working on this season's podcast, I've been thinking about how there are all these different words to describe how we fight back against power, whether it's protest, social justice, resistance. What are the words that come to you when you think about how you bring truth to power?
So, of course, for me, resistance is important, but also because I'm an educator, I'm always trying to see how can education is an important word because opening the minds of young people who are not, obviously, nobody's born racist or nobody's born with these ideas in their mind, oppressive ideas. So, but they are taught that somewhere. So it is also our job to see if we can coax them into opening their mind. So education seems important. I think love seems important. I think breath seems important. Um, match energy seems very important to me. Energy is a way to, as a material force that moves the world. So how do we move through the world, and how do we keep modeling a particular way of moving through the world? One more thing that seems important: cellular pathway. By that I mean, when we are used to pushing back, that becomes part of the way our cells react. So to shift our cellular pathways also to turn inward to caring for ourselves. So we don't become the pushback. We don't become defined in that one mold. So then we forget to take care of each other, of ourselves.
Oh, wow. So you're both an educator, a teacher, and you're an artist, and you're a working artist. How do those two roles interplay with each other in showing up in the world as a social justice person?
Yeah, so I'm an educator as I'm a professor of dance. So I feel they mix very well. I love teaching a course that I created called Social Justice Choreography. So I'm inviting students to think, because, there's so much dance that is, especially with social media, that is about, okay, what's the highest you can jump? What's the biggest sort of moves you can do? And what about if we enter dance from a different door? What about if we enter dance to see how much can we move people by simple little movements? How can we invite people to find, if we are to touch each other with consent, how can that touch become transformative in a very, in a community way? So things like that become an opportunity for me to invite students into a different way of entering the dance world.
I can only imagine because I think that people think of dance as this very, um, I don't know, specific skills based, almost inherent, like, when people say, and I'm probably one of those people who say it, well, I can't dance, when I can tell you're the kind of person that would say everybody can dance, right? I knew you were going to say that. Because dance is about movement, right? And if you can move, and if you can move with feeling, that's dancing, right?
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Everyone moves in their way.
Yes. So you've received both a Guggenheim Fellowship and a McKnight Fellowship, which are two very prestigious honors. Why do you think it's so important for art to receive this kind of recognition and support?
Because art making is can be lonely, and we need to also support the artists who are working with us. So when we get this recognition, when we get these awards, we are actually able, it's a huge affirmation that however difficult the process, it does mean something in the world. And I will say that I'll make a particular plea for dance. Dance is live, dance, which is a live form, is one of the few art forms that doesn't produce a thing. You can't buy a piece of dance and take it. You can't touch the dance. You can only experience dancing. So it's sort of, it's this labor which we pour our heart and soul and bodies into, but you only have that intangible experience at that moment when you dance and the audience, and you gave all of your energy to the audience, and the audience met you. That's all you need. So that when awards come to us, it means that that recognition is there. It's really, really valuable and affirmative.
Yes, yes. So what would you say to an, I won't say older, to an experienced artist, an artist who's been doing their thing for a while, but who's feeling kind of discouraged right now in these times?
Yeah, this is a difficult time for sure. So I would first say to them, yes, it's difficult. I acknowledge that this is a difficult time. But if the thing about dance is we do it for the next generation. So if not you, who is going to keep dancing and clearing the path? Maybe our work now is to keep clearing the path, opening doors as best as we can so the next generations can continue dancing. And because we never can only dance for ourselves, it's a public act. It's not, you can't paint, you can paint alone, but you cannot do dancing. Just, you can dance by yourself, but I think that moment of in meeting with the audience becomes really heightened. So we have to keep doing that. We have to keep changing the minds of audiences. And we know we have a history of doing that in our body. So we know how to do that without making huge statements. Just small, everyday, continuous, daily acts of dancing are going to change the world.
I love that. So the flip of the question that I just asked you is, what advice would you give a new artist who's nervous about stepping directly into the path of protest through their art?
Well, I'm going to remind them of that poem that's really famous about, first they came for someone else, I didn't speak, then they came for someone else, they didn't speak because it wasn't a. Oppression is something that is just going to work its way down to everyone. So you have to speak. Dance actually enables us to understand the magnitude of energy. We can dance here, but when we start to pull out our energy streams and connect to audience out there, we understand how big we can get. So that means energetically big, right? So that means that we can really understand and empathize with human experience, with the suffering and the joy and the pushback and the struggle that is at the core of so many of our lives. So once we start to feel it in ourselves and dance from there and ask for justice, then we begin to actually both understand others, and we begin to, like, that is the biggest way to dance. And I think you can dance for competitions, you can dance to see how high your leg can go. At some point, it's going to stop. At some point, it's going to stop feeding you. So may as well jump into dance for life's sake, you know?
So right now, what would you say is the thing most inspiring and influencing you?
I would say the fact that I feel that people are mobilizing across the world. And I feel like there is also, when I dance with the artists I work with, it gives me so much joy and connectivity. That connectivity really, really helps me keep going. But also, I will say I am so deeply inspired by the state in which I live, by the city in which I live, by people's willingness to come out in that minus 21-degree weather, you know, not for themselves, but for the society at large, but for the community. I feel like that's showing up in public space, you know, with the difficulty, the really physical difficulty that people experience because of that extreme cold, right? The long walks that people did. That is something that is deeply encouraging to me and heart-filling. So that keeps me going.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I ask everybody in these interviews. What is your favorite protest song?
Okay. There's so many that I can think of.
You can have more than one.
Okay. So there is one Bengali protest song which I grew up with. And this was written by a poet who was part of the anti-colonial struggle and the class struggle. And this song it's called Shankuchil. It takes the metaphor of the seagull to begin with the protest against the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then it goes on to talk about a global revolution. And he says, in my song, and the seagull says, in my song of peace, there are waves and waves of justice that are coming, and it's a global movement. Come join me. That's one of my favorite songs.
I love it. Oh, wow. Well, this has been wonderful. I have very much enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Michelle. I've enjoyed chatting with you as well. And I look forward to when you come and join us in the dance.
Okay. Big thanks to Ananya Chatterjea for talking with us about the power of motion. We'll let you know how you can find more of her work in our show notes. And thanks to you for listening. Next up on Race Unwrapped, we'll meet Atlanta Art Gallery owner Onaje Henderson. I'm Michelle Tyreen Johnson, and this is Race Unwrapped.
Race Unwrapped is produced by Michelle Tyreen Johnson for Louisville Public Media. Music by Allison Cross. Our executive producer is Laura Ellis. For more information, to contact us, or to support Race Unwrapped, visit raceunwrapped.org.
Support for Race Unwrapped comes from the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. Their mission is to enhance the public's knowledge of the history, heritage, and cultural contribution of African Americans in Kentucky and the African diaspora. KCAAH is dedicated to providing a heritage experience through education, enrichment, and entertainment. Located at 1701 West Muhammad Ali Boulevard. Calendar of events and more at kcaah.org.
From Louisville Public Media.